Thank you very much. My question is about the relation in your thinking, and this comes from what you were, the section where you were discussing Glas, the relation in the way that you're thinking about left and right in relation to the pages there. So the relation between the pairing left and right and the pairing recto verso.
Yes.
Which I know you'll have thought about.
Yes.
And that's just suggesting to me all sorts of interesting things about the way that left is divided within itself, and the way that those relations shift with the movement of the pages, and as it were, effacement of previous status and relations and so on. That's where that's taking me, but I'd love to hear something of your reflections on that question.
One of the things that I spend some time trying to do is to actually think about how the two columns, but I'm attending to the left column, are actually broken amongst themselves. So there's a left in the left, and there's a left and a left on the recto and the verso. So you're getting a kind of quite interesting proliferation of these kinds of divisions. And what I'm interested in there is the sort of sense in which the consistency of topic as it's drifting over these spaces suggests that there's some kind of correlation, that we're being asked to see something about the machinery of the thinking and the graphic reproduction of the thinking. That in my treatment of this says that there's something here to be made of this attention to the left. And what I try to do there is to say, well, you know, he's interested in how this division left and right has become part of this animal-human relation that he's trying to put pressure on. And he's trying to find the way to get at that in Hegel's thinking about the question of the animal in relation to the heteronormative family. Now, he doesn't develop that in an especially rich way, and so I'm trying to kind of make more of that than I should, I suppose. Now, the fact is that the recto-verso problem is a little more erratic, because certain things will end up on the verso that you're not quite expecting to be there. So there's something more to be thought along the lines of, well, so what's going on, to reiterate my own question. And of course, there's a difference between the French and the English or any of the other translations. And so there's something there about the deliberateness with which the thing as a kind of technical object got produced to look a certain way, to force you to engage it in a certain way. So at another level here, one deals with the kind of profound problem of the translatability of that technical object. There's something about it that persists with a kind of obstinacy that's appealing.
So we'll take two questions, and if you can answer both of them at the same time,
sure,
that'd be great.
That'll be interesting.
Thank you, John. It's just a very quick question about the Ravel piece, which I haven't played it with an orchestra, but I do play it, and so
okay, good.
One has some sort of insight into it. It's just that I just wanted you to clarify what you meant when you said that it has a narrative of loss and recovery.
Yeah.
Because it seems from the very beginning you have this opening flourish, the left hand beginning at the very lowest note, and it goes quite high up the keyboard. That it refuses from the very beginning to suggest that anything has been lost, that the left hand on its own cannot do something that both hands together could do. And the other thing to point out is that because of the way the left hand in itself is oriented, to do with the thumb and the way it is, this gives the left hand in itself an orientation, of course, from left to right, and with the thumb and so on.
Right.
And that orientation, when it comes to the piano, makes the left hand a much better hand to write music for, if you're just writing for one hand. There's almost no pieces for the right hand alone. So in a certain sense, the left hand, when it comes to the piano, was always superior in some sense.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm especially interested in with the Ravel is the way it opens. And since you've played it, have you played it with an orchestra? No. Okay. Well, in that context, that entry, which you've described very accurately, on the other hand, is set in motion by this kind of, this kind of enter the Kraken sort of thing, and then the piano picks it up. And it literally does travel all the way up to sort of say, okay, the whole range. Now, and then it comes back into that sort of opening territory where you're not quite sure where we are chromatically. And yet we get there and we find some themes and we develop them. And I'm just trying to set in opposition that way to set it going and where it ends with those very nice chords that get us to closure. And that's the narrative that I'm trying to put the soloing in the midst of. Now, that said, you're right about the left hand. And from what I can gather from the correspondence, this is something that Prokofiev and Wittgenstein were actually sort of talking with. That is to say, if you can move your body, you can do a lot with the left because of its orientation. So the trick is to get the right bench.
I would only add something about the glass as a technical object. There are many references in Derrida discourse on glass, explaining how it works. Mm-hmm. And one is in interview in architectural discussion at Yale in 1986,
yeah, I know.
Where he told that glass is his masterpiece in architectural art, is a work of art in architecture. And if you remember that the first 5-6 pages of glass are on the section of architecture
right.
in Hegel aesthetics. But there is also the question of the volume, the three-dimensional writing that is connected with the mythographies in Leroy-Gourhan, the notion of mythographies in Leroy-Gourhan, and then also the question of how was the first edition, no? That is more large than Hague, no? Because it was an attempt to produce a three-dimensional object, an object. But at the same time, there is in the letter that he had at the English translation made by Levlin, where the question of the volume is the question of the Torah. And maybe this is interesting for you because it's the question of that there is all the ritual between the two hands, how they have to open. And in fact, if you compare a page of glass with a page of Torah, they are absolutely really similar. Then there is also this. And the last one that I can quote is in the Prière d'Enserré, no? The 2 pages that Derrida always add to his books. He told in the Prière d'Enserré that the most important reading is exactly in the middle of the 2 columns. And he says that it is I don't know the words in English, le battant. Le battant, it is interesting for you for the question of the be symmetrical, because le battant is, and he say that, is in the window, the things that permit to open and close the window, the battant. But at the same time, the battant is the piece of the glass. When you down,
strike the bell.
down. Only I would only give you.
No, those are all wonderful ways of elaborating the problem. Yeah. Well, are we done? The only other thing I was going to say is that I do think that part of this effort to think about where this text happens, this technical object? What are its properties? And where is the important? It strikes me that there have been so many kind of efforts to get at what is going on here. And is it the middle, or is it the columns, or is it the relation, or the side, or the top, or the bottom? I mean, it completely changes what reading means. Completely. So that there's something that seems to me to be really an elaboration of this idea that, you know, reading isn't a kind of competence that a subject deploys in order for the purposes of affirming literacy. Reading is a completely different way of engaging with what can be read. And that loop, I think, you know, Glas puts in motion very, very powerfully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.